morning light was just beginning to tint the sky with soft gray when he opened his eyes. The air outside was still and cool, carrying the freshness that only comes at dawn. He stretched out in bed for one last moment before rising, preparing for another busy day ahead. Gathering himself together, he left the warmth of his apartment and stepped out into the chilly morning air. The streets were quiet as he walked to catch his usual bus. The landscape seemed ever-changing overnight. Construction barriers had shifted positions again, making navigation a bit more challenging than it was yesterday. Despite this, he managed to find his way through the maze-like streets with practiced ease, arriving at the bus stop just in time. The ride to work was uneventful, but provided him with a moment of quiet reflection before diving into the day's tasks. By the time he reached the office building, the sky had begun to brighten significantly, and there was a noticeable buzz starting up around him. He entered through the familiar doors and made his way to his desk. During lunch break, as usual, he walked out to grab something quick from one of the nearby eateries. Today, however, there was something different about the street corner near his workplace. A new café had opened its doors since last week, a small but inviting space tucked between an old bookstore and a bustling café that served only coffee in the mornings. Curiosity piqued, he decided to stop by for a quick bite. The interior of the café was cozy, with wooden furniture arranged in nooks designed for comfortable conversation. A mix of people occupied each corner. Friends chatting over cups of steaming tea, students poring over books, and lone individuals sipping their coffees quietly. While waiting his turn at the counter to order, he overheard a young woman nearby talking about her grandmother's recipe for chocolate chip cookies that she sold at local markets. The mention of warm, home-baked treats stirred something inside him, a fleeting thought of bringing joy into someone else's day with such simple gestures. Back in the office after lunch, one of his colleagues approached him. "Have you noticed any changes around the neighborhood recently?" His colleague's question drew a nod from him as he mentioned the new cafe briefly before changing the subject back to work tasks. For him, it seemed unimportant unless someone else found it noteworthy too. Later in the afternoon, another colleague commented on how nice it would be for someone to bring cookies into the office. With this thought lingering in his mind, he made a mental note to visit that new cafe after work and pick up some treats. Once done with his work responsibilities for the day, he headed out promptly towards the small cafe down the street. Inside, the place was still bustling, but not as crowded as earlier during lunch hour. He waited patiently in line and ordered a batch of cookies, along with a cup of coffee to enjoy on his way back. As he left the cafe, carrying an extra box wrapped up neatly under one arm, his attention was drawn towards an elderly man struggling near the entrance of the office building. The man had dropped his bag and was having difficulty gathering scattered papers around him. Without much thought, he rushed over to help, but accidentally knocked the bag over again in the process. Flustered, the old man collected everything while muttering quietly under his breath about how such things always happen when one least expects them. He felt a pang of guilt for causing more trouble than he intended to solve. Yet, there was no need to apologize, as the elderly gentleman seemed more annoyed with the situation rather than him personally. Upon reaching their office floor, they distributed the cookies to grateful colleagues who were delighted by this unexpected gesture. However, one colleague asked about the significance behind bringing treats so randomly, while another joked that it was nice but questioned why. There weren't more regular breaks for snacks throughout the day. He shrugged off these comments without addressing them directly. He knew some might find his actions odd or unnecessary, but what mattered most to him were the small moments of happiness created along the way. As the workday wound down, a package arrived containing homemade cookies from an elderly woman they had helped earlier in the week. Inside was also a note thanking them for their assistance and mentioning how their kindness made her day better, despite all the construction barriers that only seemed to complicate life further. He smiled warmly but didn't feel the need to explain or justify his actions any more than he already did. For him, it wasn't about seeking validation. Rather, it was simply about doing what felt right in those moments. The day ended with a sense of sadness from helping others, even if misunderstandings arose along the way. This small act of bringing cookies had sparked connections and conversations that might not have otherwise occurred during another mundane workday. And as he left for home at dusk, he couldn't help but feel grateful for these fleeting moments where kindness became more just an action. It was a shared experience between strangers turned colleagues, turning the ordinary into something extraordinary.